regardless of who is declared winner, the American people deserve to have a voting system we can trust.
We're not counting illegal votes. We're not counting dead people's votes. In Wisconsin, elections are fair and accurate.
I don't think that Hillary Clinton, who got 2 million more votes than Mr. Trump in the popular election, thinks that it's going to transform the election. But do people have the legal right to do it? Yeah, we do.
There is a respect for the process and the peaceful transition of power, which is why this recount by Jill Stein and now the Hillary people is just so confounding and disappointing, where if they're going to be a bunch of crybabies and sore losers about an election that they can't turn around.
Well, the recount is moving forward in Wisconsin. It may happen in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, led by Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. That has not been sitting well with the president-elect, who tweeted over the weekend, in addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally. Serious voter fraud in Virginia, New Hampshire, and California. So why isn't the media reporting on this? Serious bias, big problem. Well, a big problem with both of those tweets, factually. But also, what about Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate? She is behind this effort. She raised $6.2 million in 5 days. That's more than she raised in the last 2 presidential cycles. 2016, she raised $3.5 million. 2012, she raised $1.2 million. So she's raised a lot of money for these recounts and is being backed by the Clinton team. Let's bring in our panel. Syndicated columnist George Will. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. A.B. Stoddard, associate editor at Real Clear Politics. And Charles Hurt, political columnist for the Washington Times. George, first of all, about the recount and Stein and the Clinton team saying, yeah, let's go for it.
Well, Stein is driving this, and I think the Clinton team feels they have to sort of go along, or what would they be saying? It's not a question of do they have a right to do this. Of course they do. And the president-elect, having spent the pre-election period saying the whole thing was rigged, and is now saying afterwards that there are these millions of fraudulent votes cast, is in a weak position to say people shouldn't proceed as though something were seriously wrong with this election. It just means that the post-factual politics that we got used to during the campaign did not end on November 8th, and we didn't expect it to. I think all sides ought to step back and think of what happened in 1960. Richard Nixon lost a wafer-thin race to Kennedy, fewer than 1 vote per precinct nationwide. There were serious allegations of fraud in Texas, which he narrowly lost, and in Illinois, where 4.7 million votes were cast, and he lost by 8,000 votes, which is chump change when you're stealing votes in the way they used to do it in Chicago. Nixon was urged to challenge both states. If he'd won both states, he'd have been president. And Nixon said, no, the country cannot stand this kind of uncertainty and the kind of virulence that would be loosed by this. And he stepped back. So we're now in a position where Nixon is a model of statesmanship compared to the current leadership. Yeah,
Charles, I should be accurate here. The Pennsylvania recount Stein filed for this afternoon. The deadline is today. Requirements for approval are very difficult, so she petitioned to court to move forward with that. So we're still waiting on, whether Pennsylvania is actually going to do it. But on the vote total between all of these 3 states, 70,000, 10,000, 27,000. Remember the recount in Florida in 2000, we were fighting in court after court over 531 votes. So you have a big hurdle that Hillary Clinton would have to win to change the dynamic.
Yeah, it's a huge hurdle, and I understand why Jill Stein is doing it. Obviously, as you noted, she's raising a lot of money off of this. She's building huge voter rolls and contacts, which are very beneficial to anybody who's in politics. I understand why the people gave money to this effort, who are bankrolling it, because of course they are delighted to do anything they can to delegitimize Trump's presidency. What I still don't understand is what on earth I understand the Clintons are sort of begrudgingly going along with this, and there's sort of some chatter among their top staffers about not really being fully behind it. But why would you go along with this at all? I think it's terrible for her. I think it's terrible for for her future in whatever it is that she wants to do. And then of course you have the voters who in 2000 were told that all the problems are caused by paper ballots, and now apparently all the electronic ballots are the problem.
A.B.
I agree. I mean, Jill Stein needs a lot of attention. She's probably going to be asking for recounts until kingdom come. But the Clinton campaign didn't have to join in. They admitted that they had their own investigation, didn't find anything of concern. So why be associated with this ludicrous effort and then leak articles to Politico about how they really find this all so irritating, although the Hillary campaign for Wisconsin is soliciting volunteers to help with the recount, a state she never campaigned in. So
yeah, let me just read that Politico quote. Hillary Clinton's closest allies are irritated with Jill Stein, it says. Irritated. Most of the small circle of operatives and friends surrounding the vanquished Democratic nominee have no illusions that the former Green Party candidate's recount pushes in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and maybe Michigan will come even close to flipping the result of the presidential election. The election, they know, is over, and it goes on, as you mentioned.
Jill Stein cost Hillary Clinton the presidency in just her margin alone without Gary Johnson's in 3 states. She should stay as far away from Jill Stein as humanly possible.
Steve.
Well, I mean, there's speculation that Hillary Clinton is doing this to try to preserve her viability for a potential run in 2020, which strikes me as totally absurd on its face. Stranger things have happened, of course. But I think Donald Trump's tweets about this are the height of irresponsibility. I mean, the problem for Trump is that not only that he's president-elect and he needs to act with more dignity, but also that his tweets are not backed up by any evidence. He's produced no evidence, and on a transition call today, apparently reporters asking his team for evidence couldn't get any evidence from his team to support the claims he's made. I think the problem is that it's not that voter fraud doesn't exist. I think voter fraud does exist. We've seen examples of voter fraud in the past. But when Trump does something like this, he makes hysterical and outrageous claims that aren't backed by evidence.
Yeah, I mean,
it hurts.
There's one group that says they have evidence true to vote, but they haven't produced it. But if you talk to the secretaries of state in all these states that he mentions, and they say there is nothing even close to those numbers.
Well, New Hampshire and Virginia have photo ID. I mean, there are all sorts of problems. But my argument here is not that voter fraud doesn't exist. I think voter fraud does exist. I think where it exists, it should be stamped out. It should be challenged. People should be prosecuted if they're caught. But you have to do this based on evidence. And when you make spurious claims of voter fraud, it hurts people who are determined to root out actual voter fraud.